welcome to another Platinum Great Worm episode of the It's a Mimic podcast, where I, Adam, am sitting down with one of our top tier patron subscribers, Scott. Platinum Great Worm tier patrons are able to sit down and record an episode with us every so often, and so Scott has decided that today we're going to be talking about subplots. Scott, why did you choose this topic for today?
Well, I chose this topic because in the campaign that I am running a pre-written module for my group, and the first two books, the main focus of it is the subplot, and it sprinkles in some of the main plot. We just last week hit the big overarching, here's actually the main plot, but up until now, the main focus of it has kind of been on the subplot, and I really liked that idea, and I was hoping to incorporate more of that into my games.
So, do you use a lot of subplots in your games, like when it's not built in? Like, are you gonna meander your way through side quests and stuff, just because your players are interested?
Yeah, I suppose so. They're pretty good at keeping on track and what's in the book. Mostly just for what I have prepared for time's sake, but I know coming up we're probably going to go to one of the characters' hometown, and I'll probably have to come up with a session of meeting his family.
Or you can mine that for tons of good, solid content.
Oh, absolutely. I'll have to figure out what the plan with that is, but it's going to leave it pretty open for me.
So, just a real quick conversation about what exactly a subplot is as far as Dungeons and Dragons goes. Because everybody really understands that or they should if they passed, grade 8 English class. They should understand what a subplot is when it comes to a book or television or movies. But it's a little bit more complex when we start to get into interactive media, like video games, or Dungeons and Dragons or TTRPGs, right? So, and you're still doing the what was it called, the carnival in Pathfinder.
Yes, we're doing Extinction Curse is the name of
Extinction
the
Curse, yeah.
adventure path. We are rounding out book 2 of 6 right about now. It's been a lot of fun. The first two books have been focused on this is your circus. Let's kind of build it up. And then book 2, you go to the hometown of the evil ringleader that most of the players probably ran away from her circus, and she gets to be the big bad of book 2. And that's kind of the big subplot that I was talking about earlier, is how it's just build your circus, and now you're in her town, and she doesn't like that, and she's going to literally bully you.
So when we look at subplots, there are a couple of different kinds of subplots. And the very first kind, because it happens at the beginning, is the introductory subplot. And this one is probably the one that most people are familiar with because it's considered to be like act one of a three-act structure. When we're dealing with, like, Star Wars is a great example. It's just introducing who all of these players are. The plot is what's going on with the Death Star, but we've got to go deal with Luke, who's not happy at home. He wants to go join up, and become a fighter pilot like his father. And who's this crazy old wizard? And there's who are these droids? What's with the message? There's all these other like little bits and pieces that don't have anything to do with the overarching plot, which is the fact that the Death Star is going to blow up the entire rebellion very, very soon. So when we deal with introductory subplots in TTRPGs, it's usually written, at least in Dungeons and Dragons, to be about the first chapter of the module, because the adventure is between 6 and 11 chapters inside one book. Right. So it's usually the first one where you kind of have this idea of you're at home, you're doing your own thing, you're getting invested in it. But we also need to start leveling up the players at the same time, because this is where they start to get comfortable with not just the mechanics that they're playing, but the characters themselves. I tell my players outright that they can write as much backstory as they want, but I'm not going to actually start mining that backstory until 3 or 4 levels into a campaign, just because they need to learn what they like about their character and what they are gravitating towards, because then I know what's going to impact them the most, what's going to feel the best. I don't try to write that stuff too early, because if they're not resonating with some things in their backstory, then we're just going to end up wasting everybody's time as they're disengaged, or at least not as engaged as I want them to be. So I think it's really cool and really interesting that they start off in this Pathfinder, 6 books. The first third of it is the carnival. Like, this is your whole introduction, the first act of a 3-act play. Whereas when you look at Dungeons and Dragons, it's 1/10, right, of one big, slowly building story.
Yeah, well, and to be fair to it, you start to get sprinkles in of the main plot in the first book, but it was chapter 3 out of 4 in book 2 out of 6 that it really spells out this is what happened and this is what's going to happen, and you need to be the ones to stop it.
That's roughly where the call to action is going to come in. That's the thing where, like, again, going back to the original Star Wars, Luke finds his aunt and uncle dead, right? Like, I guess I'm doing this thing now. I have no choice but to move forward. And so this call to action tends to be something that we start off in most TTRPGs. We've got that right from the very beginning. What's the thing that brings the party together, that gets them focused on defeating the bad guys or solving the problem, or whatever the overarching plot's going to be? There's this one like plot hook to bring them in. But we have to remember that we can't just do that at the beginning. It's usually like you meet in a tavern. That's the cliche. That's the initial bringing everyone together, the initial call to action. But the real call to action is the one that links us to the main plot. So I'm curious, how did this story of Extinction Curse, how did it bring the characters together? Was it just you are all members of a circus?
Yes, it was you are all members of the circus. The very, very, very first performance of this circus is happening tonight. That is the very beginning of it. Whatever your background is, you are now a circus performer. And to be fair, I can think of 110 different reasons why someone in D&D or Pathfinder land would run away from home and join a circus.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's hard baked right into to the format, really. When you ended up revealing that, okay, hey, here's the big conflict that we're going to be dealing with, this is the call to action moving forward, here's the main plot, how did your players react?
We spent a good 10 to 15 minutes unpacking all of it, just kind of out of character, especially like with me as the DM, making sure that they are understanding it correctly.
Mm-hmm.
It was revealed in 2 parts. One of them was a book. No, that was the second part. So the first part that they did, they are in a temple to past God, and we're able to access a pool of memories for when the invaders came in, where they literally said, hey, this is like our forward operating base. We're going to take down these orbs that sustain life for the region, and it's because of this past crime done upon us. So that was the first part, and they're like, okay, hold on, what is going on? So they're here to take down these orbs that we saved one of them in book 1. Okay, interesting. Well, then they go back to the library. They find another book that's talking about how this god found in the Underdark, essentially, these 6 orbs that were giving all this life energy, and they weren't being used to their potential. So he took 5 of them and left them with 1. And that was when they pieced it all together, that this god went and stole these orbs, and these people centuries later are finally coming back to get their revenge.
So was there a big like exposition dump then by like an NPC, or were you just narrating a cutscene of memories from this
Uh,
memory
it
pool?
it was a lot of narrating. I had to narrate the cut scene of memories. The lady that wrote book 2, wonderful author. Very easy to go through, wonderfully engaging. I loved how she wrote it out. The second part was supposed to be a handout that I had printed to them, but the problem is if I printed out this handout and gave it to them, they'd both struggle to read it because it's in cursive.
that's like its own different script for a lot of people. I'm of the generation where we had to learn cursive in school, but I know they stopped teaching that like 15, 20
You
years ago.
know, we both, all three of us are roughly the same age. I mean, they're twins, so they're exactly the same age. I'm just like 3 months older than they are. We had to do like a semester's worth of cursive in like the third grade. I don't read it as long as it's kind of neat.
Yeah, look, that's fair. At this point, I only ever use it for signing my name.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, my younger brother doesn't even sign his name; he prints it.
Fair. I mean, I think that entire style of having to write in that way is going to completely disappear. It was a way to be able to write things faster, and now we're all digital anyway, right? So,
Exactly. I mean, I'm not in Canada and you're not in the States, so we're doing this digitally anyway.
exactly. So when we get back to subplots here, really quickly, there are, in my opinion, three different kinds of subplots. And this is how I attack it from my perspective when I'm doing my homebrew campaign. The first kind is the subplot that directly serves a character's backstory and is directly devoted to one or two players, but like shines a spotlight on what's going on with them specifically. This kind of subplot is one that I will cycle through the different players. I keep kind of an eye on it. It's not a perfect like player one, player two, player three going in initiative, but I do try to make sure that, see, I've got the luxury of having 5 hour sessions minimum. Sometimes it can go as long as 8, which is 2 to 3 times as long as a lot of other people's sessions. So we're sitting around the table. I can shift my focus from one player character to another player character in a organic way, or I'm able to plan ahead of time. Like my sessions where I'm like, okay, set piece encounter in the first half and a set piece encounter in the second half, with 2 or 3 dynamic encounters and a bunch of random encounters in the middle. And I'm willing to sit back and let them tell me what they want to do for a while. I can be reactionary. So I've got a lot of leeway with this. So, but I do try to make sure that I'm cycling through the spotlight. And the best way to tie someone into a campaign is to grab their backstory and make it a subplot. Now, I've also guaranteed my players that I'm not going to put all of their beloved NPCs in danger. When I ask for give me your background, it's not give me tools to punish you with, which was very much what happened in the previous campaign. But we knew it was going to be dark and nasty and horrible. So I was murdering family members left and right. I think Megan's first big spotlight for her character that was tied to the backstory was the ancestral sword with her father's voice in it that would guide her in her moments of weakness when she was a paladin. It got smashed and his soul disappeared, and that was the end of that. That was like, it was a grueling campaign. She was there for, she loved it, but it was so grueling that I had to turn to them afterwards and say, okay, for the next campaign, don't be protective, be as creative as you want. I promise, like, there's gonna be drama, there's going to be conflict, but I'm not gunning for your backstories anymore. That means that when I
Fair
get,
enough.
yeah, I mean, we needed a balance, and this allowed Dan to explore being a lighthearted bard that just wanted to be a hero, right? And Casey to just be like, I'm a Loxodon cleric who just wants everyone to feel like we're family. And it gave them more simplistic and more fun and more relaxed characters. Megan and Charlie still went down the dark road because I don't know how to not go down the dark road. And I love them for that. Thank you, if they're listening. But
I was
I,
gonna say that sounds just like them.
yeah, absolutely. They're there for the fucking drama. But when I started to look into their backstories and their subplots, I was able to look at kind of more simplistic things. Let me bring forward one of your siblings. Let me have a thing that like that really meant a lot to you, an item that meant a lot to you. Other people are going to start to revere it as well. Casey's cleric had a snow globe that if you shake it, there'd be all these little bits and pieces of glitter inside. Well, she was a twilight cleric and she worshipped a god of the stars. And so when it would do this, it would look like a little night sky in it, and people loved it. She would whip it out in front of a whole bunch of NPCs, and they would like want her to pray with it as like almost a holy symbol for them to focus and meditate on. And like these are fun little bits and pieces from their backstory, and this allowed me to bring in some major subplots, like when Casey's character died and she brought in a new character, and she's like, I want to be traveling with I guess my father. I want him to be an an ASMR because I'm an ASMR. I'm like, I got you for this one, absolutely. And she ended up being Mieka's long lost sister. That subplot was a gift to me that the two of them accidentally gave me a half of, and I was able to bring it together and reveal to them that they were siblings. And they've got a whole bunch of subplot now because their mother is up to shit and they don't quite know what. She's been an ally in previous campaigns, but she's acting real suspiciously now. And their father is almost like lawful good and stupid about it. So they've got this real big connection with these NPCs in their lives because I didn't just go kill them off. And that's a problem with a lot of these personal subplots that we have is I'm putting their Hobbiton is in danger, right? They've got to come back and fight. There's other things to do than just threaten people, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and for my boyfriend's character, where we'll end up meeting his family, I mean, the extent of the danger therein is, well, the module is called Extinction Curse. I think you
yes,
can put together that they're in danger with that,
yeah,
but that's the only danger that I ever intend to put them in.
yes, the general background danger of the campaign, right? There's a death curse that's happening when Tomb of Annihilation. That's another one. Like this will affect everyone in the world, but I'm not holding a crossbow to the temple of one of the characters' family members, right? So
Yeah.
the next kind of subplot that is worth pointing out is a subplot. If it's not for the players, then it's for the DM. And there are some subplots that I just think are fucking neat that I want to play with. There are some things. Let me tell you right now, and I hope my players aren't listening to this. The Tarrasque is too small in my world, so I have beefed it up to be what's called the mountain that moves. It is huge. They're going to discover that they are going to be able to climb on top of it as if it is a gigantic walking island, and there will be specific kinds of monsters. I'm thinking like what I'm going to call Tarrasque mites, and I'm just going to use like insectile creatures that are like burrowed into its hide that they're going to have to fight against and whatnot. And they're going to have to ride this thing as it goes from one city to another, and they got to try to figure out how to kill it. And there will be runes and hints and clues on the back of it. I am so excited for this. That is just a subplot. It has nothing to do with the rest of the storyline. I just think it's going to be memorable and badass and cool. And I can't wait for them to hit like level 17 so we can do this shit.
Oh, I agree. I almost think that you need to add a little monastery of like Aarakocra to the top of it that just blindly worship this mountain that moves.
I was thinking about having it growing like a whole bunch of plant life on the back of it as well, but all of the plant life is growing big because the Tarrasque is big. He's been literally enlarged by evil wizards who have cast enlarge so often that it's not permanent on him. So as it moves, he's gonna have all these like trees and like because seeds have landed on his back, and he never gets clean. He's covered in dirt. So I'm thinking those trees are going to take root. They're going to cause him discomfort, which is why he's always raging all of the time. And then there will be, I'm thinking about actually putting Bigby on his back, like the famous halfling wizard, gnome wizard. I think Bigby's a gnome.
You're asking the wrong dude.
Yeah, absolutely. but I want to put a famous wizard on the back. And you say monastery. I was thinking about like a crease in the back of its neck that is actually going to act as a giant cave that's full of like prophecy and runes and all this like weird shit in there with a bunch of guardians that are holding Bigby back as the players come up on that. And this is how they're going to defeat the Tarrasque through a series of smaller combats and skill challenges and shit like that. But this is a subplot I'm really excited about. When they kill the Tarrasque and it dies and it's laying on the ground and it's not getting up, what is that going to do to the landscape if it falls across a major road or if it falls over onto a town? Or you got to think.
Well, I suppose if it's the mountain that moves, there's now a mountain there, and it's a carcass, but it's a mountain. So
Yeah,
say goodbye to whatever was there. It's a mountain.
yeah, and I love the idea of it just being so like just this ridiculous mountain of rotting meat that no one can deal with. The carrion, the undead that'll come to ghouls will be absolutely attracted to it. It should be neat and really really evocative and memorable. So
Oh, just wait till the myconoids find it. Grow, turn that into a giant fungal Tarrasque.
Oh, I like that because they can actually make spore servants.
Uh-huh. Imagine a myconid colony that has a Tarrasque as a spore servant. There's the big bad for your next campaign.
Hold on, I'm taking notes. I think that might be the thing that they do. I promised them that we're going to get up to level 22. And D&D doesn't have anything above level 20, right? So I'm just going to be letting them multi-class, or they can take on more like boons and stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say there are those legendary boons or whatever they call them.
Yeah, and so I'm going to give them that stuff, but I needed like you've completed the mission. What's the last thing? What's the big heroic thing? And having the Tarrasque stand back up might be the thing. That's
That would be fun. I mean, no better way for a myconid colony to take over whatever they want other than to have a Tarrasque as a spore servant.
yeah, and they just pissed off a whole colony of myconids.
Oh,
So
would you
I'm
look
like,
at that?
yeah, what a happy little gift. So, but these, like I say, these are subplots. These are things that happen in the background, and subplots, for me, when it come to things that entertain the dungeon master, they don't actually have to be tied into the plot. They can be things that they come across, but in order for it to just be a subplot and not like a random encounter or a new NPC that joins the party or something like that, it has to be something that devote a certain amount of time to. I tend to think of it as 2 or 3 sessions. When they got into my town called Anamnesis, where they were dealing with the false hydra and all the memory loss, they were there for 4 sessions, each at least 5 hours long. They spent over 20 hours trying to deal with this thing. And that is a subplot, right? When they discovered that there was a hot air balloon that was run by goblins that were holding a bunch of humans captive, they killed the goblins and got a hot air balloon and then some human allies. That's not a subplot. That's just an encounter with a reward, right? They managed to get that done in a couple of hours and moved on to the next thing. So when we
Yeah,
look at
and they
subplots,
found a purple penguin ally.
did they ever? He is still around, and they just haven't been on that side of the map in a while. They kind of lost their allies and stuff. It was funny. They blinked him out of existence with some magic to save his life, but they did it in the hot air balloon with the understanding that in 9 days he will blink back into existence wherever he left. It's just like putting a pause button on somebody's existence. And they did this for a number of people, including Megan's character as well, when she was away for a handful of sessions. But then they took the hot air balloon. So he's going to come back 250 feet in the air and plummet. And so he has enough hit points to live, I think. I will roll for it and find out. But they're going to have a very angry purple penguin, which I'm excited about. But no, the difference between a subplot and an encounter is really the amount of time that you put on it. And a subplot has to have some amount of impact, either for the characters or the world, but most importantly for the players. If it is completely disconnected from everything else, then it's just a side quest. But if it is something that drives the characters and the plot forward in minor ways that you could skip, you don't have to spend time on this, but it helps if you do. That's a subplot. So the last category of subplot that I take into consideration is the subplot that is actually secret plot, right? Where they're doing this completely this mundane task of some sort that they're not really paying attention to, that will just slowly and eventually become a major part of the plot. And when we listen to the campaign builder on the Patreon, we've got Oscar the Orc, who's been the clerk for the union, the guild that they're in. And so he has just been tagging along, but he's also been secretly sabotaging their shit for like 80 sessions before he pops off and actually betrays them, which means that every interaction with him, while it might seem like a little side quest here, a little side quest there, just a funny little encounter and interaction, all of that is building the case for the subplot to get bigger and bigger and bigger until it joins the main plot and will completely steer the main plot in an unforeseen direction. And so that's the last kind of subplot, is the secret plot, right? The one that is slowly building in the background. And I often have 4 or 5 of those going in any given campaign, where I'm just curious to see where we're going to go next, if they're going to follow along with this. A great example of a subplot that I have in my homebrew world right now is all of my players got deputized and were given a certain amount of leeway and funding to operate as a special unit of town guard in the main capital city. And then I gave them a bunch of minor quests to deal with. And they could choose which quests they wanted to do. They would understand kind of how long it would take in game. and then they would try to solve mysteries or arrest people or stop conflicts at like a social level that's happening inside the city. They went ranging out a little bit to go on scouting missions. But one thing that they didn't do, they had the opportunity over and over and over again to investigate, was the fact that there's a whole lot of stench coming from the sewers and nobody knows why. And the myconids that are down there that usually take care of the sewers are starting to appear in the underground tunnels around the city and in darkened areas, and nobody knows why. And there was this whole big subplot down there for them to go deal with what's going on in the sewers. And there was a whole Myconid versus Ooze battle that was happening down there. I had Zugtamoy and Dweeblex, or Jublex, I guess he's called now, which are the two like demon princes, and I guess princess of fungus and ooze that are usually working together, but now they're fighting down there for some reason. Nobody knows why. And my players just kind of spaced on, said, we don't want to go to the sewers. That sounds smelly. And so they didn't. When they come back from their shit, this whole subplot will have popped off. They're going to have major issues in the city, and they're going to have to fight a bunch of oozes and fungi. And I'm very excited about them having to do that. But they've ignored it, thinking that it was a side quest, when it turns out it's going to be an entire subplot, because whichever side they decide to deal with, the Myconids or the oozes, is going to get them favor with one of the demon princes. And then that's going to give them an in to go deal with Demogorgon, who has captured the soul of one of their fallen comrades, Dave's old character that died. So there's a lot of shit going on in the background. And they just said, oh, hey, people are complaining about the smell in the sewers. I'm not interested in that. I'm going to go rescue the missing girl that was ice fishing and then disappeared. That kind of shit. So
they picked all the side quests over the subplot.
They really did. Now, there are a couple of side plots in there, or subplots rather, that were in there as well. One of them being that the captain that was overseeing them was a drunken minotaur named Roombury, and he was just having absolutely none of their shit and getting drunker and drunker and drunker. And they actually turned, like, they really liked him and he was great and he's just a fun little character. But this was a secret subplot as well, because they ran into Lolth at incredibly low level, ended up burning a whole bunch of really high powered stuff from the armory in the city for like one-off encounter against Lolth, banished Lolth, but not before she killed Roombury. When they banished her through a whole bunch of plot nonsense, he ended up coming back, but he remembers dying. And now he doesn't want to play anymore. This is no longer fun. He just wants to hide in his apartment and drink. So he's become this tragic character, but he's got a future where he is going to, depending on how the players interact with him, either come in and save the day or go and undermine their efforts when there's going to be a political shift later on. And the players are going to have to figure out what side they're going to be on. And Roombury is going to be kind of the key to whether or not the public is on the player side. So I've got all of these subplots started. They're all marinating over in the corner. I've got them at a low simmer. And I'm very, very excited to pull these subplots out, but they all felt like side quests or minor details to start with. So that's my first question for you when it comes to your subplots. How early do you hit them with the foreshadowing? How early do you sprinkle the seeds if you know something's coming?
I am not sure. I'm still undecided. I haven't fully pulled the trigger on a homebrew campaign as of yet. I've only ever run pre-written stuff, so I haven't found the style that I want to go with. I don't think for my very, very first homebrew campaign, I'm going to be able to do these deep embedded subplots like you have in your game. I would definitely like to try a couple of them, though.
One of the things that I'm aware of about the future of your homebrew is that you want to do it in Eberron, right?
Oh, 100%. Does that happen to coincide with the fact that we talked about Eberron for my last episode? Maybe, perhaps.
There is so much intrigue and so many things like the Draconic Prophecy that's just sitting in the background, right? Or the way that fiends interact with the world when they're down in Kyber in the underworld, right? There's the blood of Vol. There's so many cults in Eberron, and whatever the hell is in the labyrinth, right? There are so many different bits and pieces to pull from, and I am so excited. Like Eberron is going to just you're going to read a chapter in a book and be like, oh, that is an entire side of this world that I don't have time to really dig into in my main plot.
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
rife
that's the
for
problem with
plucking for small
Eberron.
ones.
The thing I run into with Eberron is I need to trim it down. There's a lot here, and I can't do all of it. Um,
If I can be perfectly honest, I think that Eberron itself should be the next like gigantic multi-series HBO endeavor, right? Like Game of Thrones is great, Eberron is better. It's a better built world than Westeros, and there's so many opportunities to do cool shit there.
oh, absolutely. I mean, we've said it before, I'll say it again. You could do a full level 1 to 20 campaign just in the city of Sharn. Just one city. You can do a full level 1 to 20 campaign.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, 100%, and I love that. God, it's so good. So when I just did an episode with Andre a little while ago, we recorded it. It hasn't come out yet. Actually, I think it comes out tomorrow by the time that we're recording this. But I asked him, he's building a kingdom, right? And I'm asking him for plot hooks for the kingdom itself. And I asked him for three. And this is actually a direct correlation to what we're talking about today. And the three are what's the plot hook that drives the plot? What's the plot hook that hooks over 50% of the players? Like you just know that if there's going to be some sort of like puppy orphanage, you've probably hooked in a number of players right off the bat.
I mean, I'm in. Puppy
Yeah,
orphanage, let's do it.
yeah, right. And then what's the plot hook that hooks you as a DM? And then once you have those pieces, as you're prepping your encounters and you kind of know where you want to go with each one of these concepts, each one of these little plot hooks, you're going to know how they will interact and intertwine. Sometimes they don't at all, and that's perfectly fine. But other times they do. But whatever it is, they have to affect the characters and or the plot. Ideally both. But even if you just end up with character growth, that's perfectly fine too. As long as your players are willing to put in the character growth. I am completely convinced that I have Dan, Megan, Mieka, and Charlie, who will be there to make the decision that mechanically sucks, but for storyline will rip their heart out. They will kill their characters, but it will feel like an epic narrative moment, and they're there for it. Casey and Dave want to strategically win. So they're not there. They're not going to make the big sacrifice. That moment of holding the door open so everyone else can get out, but then you get trapped inside and then the volcano erupts and you die. I don't think that Dave or Casey are going to do that. The rest of them might, which means that when I have these plot hooks, I know who I'm trying to sucker in. I've got my 4 out of 6 players who I can get my meat hooks into and drag them along for their subplot. You have 2 players, right?
Yes, I have 2. My boyfriend and his twin brother.
How this is going to sound strange. You are far too close to the situation to actually pass appropriate judgment. However, how similar are they in personality?
Fairly. I mean, out of the 27 years they've been alive, I think the longest one period of consecutive time they've been apart is a month.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Went to the same college, lived together, and everything. I have had these thoughts of how old will I be when Joe and I finally don't live with Andy?
Yeah, I asked because with twins, like Dan's got twin girls, and they are very very different, introvert and extrovert. Right? They're 2 sides of the same coin. They got the same sense of humor. They've got the same kind of interests, generally speaking, because they're both 9. However, they don't have like their color palettes are different. One's got long hair, one's got short hair. One wants to get outside and play, another wants to stay in on the couch. They're very different. Are your players, are the twins, are they managing like different interest sets, different skill sets, and things like that? Are you able to hook one and not the other?
Ooh, that might be a challenge. I think I could do it. I'd have to think. It'd take me a bit to figure out what's gonna hook just one of them, though.
Well, that gives you a good opportunity because that means that because my big thing is always try to hook more than 50% of the players on any given plot hook. So you will know when it falls flat with one, it'll fall flat with both. You can discard that, move on to the next thing. Or if it
Absolutely. I do have that advantage of it. It's going to be an all or nothing kind of deal. I mean, we're playing the campaign that we're playing because Paizo has little trailers for their adventure paths on the website. So
yeah,
I played the video and they said circus and dinosaurs, that's the one we're playing.
look, as an absolutely self admittedly dino kid for literally 40 years of my life, and then on top of that I literally worked at an amusement park as a scary clown. I This campaign setting that I've nearly bought it and I don't even have I don't play Pathfinder. I probably never will. I don't have any of the core rule books. I know they're all available online, but like I don't own anything Pathfinder except for some minis that were gifted to me by accident. They thought they were D&D minis. And so I'm like, okay, I still need to read this entire module. It sounds so fucking rad. It speaks to me. So like being able to hook players is so important when it comes to your side quests and subplots and minor details, your non-story specific NPCs, the details that don't matter to the plot but matter to the world. It's nice to be able to know that you've got an entire table. It is such a gift for you as a DM to know that you've got someone who, or you've got a party that is 100% in or 100% out, so you know exactly what to spend time on. Because
Yes.
I just ran, okay, so I've split my party up right now. They are in one, two, three, four different, they split the party four ways among six characters, to the point where we actually had to bring Kyle in to guest star for 4 months so that one person who was in a particularly dangerous position wouldn't have to just be by themselves. I needed someone that could, force a health potion down their throat. So I ended up having Megan and Casey and Charlie all together for a while. And then Megan split off to do her own thing again. And Charlie and Casey were set up to do a huge fight. They are level 7, and they are set up to fight a Dracolich that's chained up beneath the city of vampires. So that's huge.
Good luck.
Yeah, they're completely underprepared, but they've got a Lich who is funding them right now. So, but I mean, that presents its own dangers. These are subplots that I've got moving forward. This Lich, these vampires, have nothing to do with the main plot, but they're going to be a massive ally or enemy depending on how the players move forward. And they've all taken levels of Warlock so that if they displease their undead patrons, they will lose the ability to do things. Their power will be taken from them. So I had Charlie and Casey who were ready to do this thing, and it would actually impact everyone else because I was going to bring all the groups together again. And then Charlie and Casey spent the entire time shopping because that's what they wanted to do. And instead of actually fighting the Dracolich, they said, "We've got a couple of days in here, right? There's no ticking clock." In my head, I'm like, well, I know Mieka's character's doing this, Megan's character's doing that, Dan, Dave, and Kyle are already captured. They're supposed to be captured for 12 hours. This is going to make them captured for 3 days. But you know what? My players want to go shopping. Fuck it, let's go shopping. And when they peeled off to go do that, I then turned to Megan and said, "Yeah, they went shopping in the last session." She looked at me and went, "Thank God I wasn't there for that. That would drive me off the fucking wall. I absolutely do not want to burn 5 hours of D&D talking to merchants." I'm like, different strokes for different folks. Mieka was jealous that she didn't get to do it. So when it comes to subplots, when it comes to subplots, it was more side quests than anything else. Although I did manage to sneak them a couple of really powerful items that they don't realize are as powerful as they know. So
Are they the situationally powerful where you know that they're going to be needing them, or they just didn't take the time to really figure out what they just got?
I don't give free identification of magic items. So you can get what's on the tag or what someone will tell you. And a lot of times it will be advertised when you go shopping. This is how it works. And my players will just accept it and not cast identify upon it. Also, I always make them roll when they identify anything using an arcana check. Charlie rolled poorly and he didn't ask more questions. So they have a cursed longsword that is going to demand blood and not be able to, it's going to, if they unattune from it, it will steal one of their attunement slots. You only have 3. That means that one of the players that decides to use this will only have 2 attunement slots for the rest of the campaign. This thing is absolutely fucking brutal. And They could have just spent some time identifying it, and they didn't. They're gonna learn the hard way. So the point that I'm trying to make is that if I circle back from my tangent, is that I had this little session where we went off shopping. There will be ripples from shopping that may turn into subplots. I try to leave it open ended to see how invested my players become. When they become very invested, then I will go down that road, and a side quest may become a subplot as I learn to tie it in through whatever their interest is. Sometimes it's just nothing. It fizzles out, or it gets overshadowed by something else, or that player's not there for 2 sessions in a row, and so we abandon it to come back to later, right? And so it's not tied in the way I wanted it to be tied in, and so it remains a side quest. But when it becomes a subplot, I have to think, how many of my players are going to be invested, and is it absolutely worth it? Way back pre-pandemic, I'm going to say the summer of 2019, 2018, I think, so a while back. I had 2 players, Jess and Jamie, who were in the campaign, and they were moving to Australia. And Jamie had a prophecy that needed to get resolved by the time that they left. And they told me, yeah, we're leaving in a month. So I'm like, okay, cool. I have like 3 sessions probably. And they said, but we can't play D&D after this date. And I'm like, that's 1 session. How the fuck am I going to do this? So I ended up taking about a third of the entire session to just spotlight Jamie's character. And because it was this big prophecy we've been talking about for over a year in game, and everyone was keeping an eye on how it was all going to play out, they were invested enough in it that I could run this resolution of a subplot, and they would be entertained. But that's rare. Most of the time, you can't take 1 person out of 5 and say, we're going to focus on this guy for 2.5 hours. Everybody else sit still, right? I'm fortunate with my players that they trusted me. I'd built enough trust with them, and they were invested enough in this storyline, and they knew what it meant to the player personally, that they were willing to sit back and just watch. But normally it's a bit of a balancing act when it comes to subplots.
Oh yeah, I'm lucking out on this, having my 2 players being twins.
Do you have so you've got, which one of your players is going back to their hometown for
It's my
shenanigans?
boyfriend.
Okay. Do you have something equally as important for Andy?
I don't. I want to plan something for him. The problem is he has in his head his backstory, and I haven't gotten it in full detail. Now, Joe would tell me it's because I'm not paying attention, and I would rebut that with, I have enough I have to be paying attention to as I'm DMing, but Joe's probably right. I kind of have a good idea with what I'd like to rope in for his backstory, and that is a conversation that I do need to have with him.
So, just for anybody listening who is a player and not a dungeon master, if you have a request, an idea, a detail that you want the DM to know, submit it in fucking writing. And
Oh my God, yes.
don't just write it on a scrap of paper to get lost in their binder. Literally send it to them in a platform where they're able to save it. For example, an email, or I like to use Discord because I can pin things. Messenger, however, I lose shit all the time. I have to remember key phrases in a conversation in order to go searching for that shit later. And it's incredibly frustrating, so I don't use it anymore. But this is why I know that Dan had a subreddit going for a while, I think, for his campaign. I think it was Dan. Someone I know did, just because they could sticky some specific details, and they could search using Reddit's absolutely terrible search function to be able to find what they needed to. I know people use wikis. Brad was running a wiki for a while for one of his campaigns to keep all the information straight. This is so fucking useful. So please submit your requests, your ideas, your details, whatever it is, in writing.
And not scrap paper writing, in a easy to save writing.
Yeah, I actually send links to my players at the beginning of whenever they drop a character, beginning of the campaign, or if the character dies and they need a new character, I will send them a link with a Google Doc link that has 500 or 600 questions in it. And my response is always, you don't have to answer everything. Give me a description, think about the stuff that's important, and fill it out where it needs to be filled out. This is not comprehensive. Do 10% of this list, 5%, just put it in here. And then let me know when you're done, because then I have it saved in a Google Doc in my Google Drive, and I can reference that whenever I want. I have just, for the first time in 2.5 years, pulled Megan's character's last name out of that document to be used in the actual campaign. Up until this point, anytime that comes up, I said, introduce yourself. And Megan says, I introduce myself. And I'm, no, introduce yourself. And then she will give her last name. And I will go, I should write that down, and never fucking do. But I have it in my Google Doc. So now she's going to learn something about her family history, the prophecy that is coming. She's going to learn all about that shit on Sunday, because she's going to find out. You're going to love this. This will come out so far after this reveal that I'm comfortable saying it out loud. She's going to discover that the Dracolich that they have to go down and kill, its phylactery is her family's bloodline, which means you cannot kill the Dracolich until all of her family tree is dead. It will always come back.
Oh boy.
So yeah, I'm gonna hit her with that. I also have, and again, this is a subplot on the side, because this is going to torment her. Our favorite NPC is her brother in game, and so we
Oh no.
yeah, and so this subplot is going to be the two of them kind of coming to terms with the fact that their family is supporting evil. Do they act as guards against it? Do they team up with the vampires to keep it chained up? Believe me when I say it is going to fucking get loose. And they're going to have to make a big decision at the end of the campaign about self-sacrifice or not. What are they going to do? Right. So, and they'll have banished to a demi-plane or whatever, but like,
well, they can start with a life of celibacy.
Well, I was going to say that's something that I would add to a novel as a plot line, as a subplot, but I wouldn't add to D&D without getting consent from my players, because her brother's character is in love with Mieka's character, and Mieka and Megan would both be I mean, they're, because every D&D player is in their early 20s and they're all beautiful as all hell, and both of them are literal princesses to different domains. So like the idea of propagating the bloodline to rule over cities and whatnot is something they both have like thought about, but now this comes with such a huge asterisk that would a pregnancy ruin this entire, like, I've got this complicated thing to ask. I'm also never going to roll dice, look at a player and say, by the way, you're pregnant, because that is
no
that crosses fucking lines. But like something I would write in a novel for sure, when I don't have a player's hopes and dreams on the line, right?
Oh no, that the oath of celibacy is what my player character would have to decide, because I'm not going to feed into the bloodline of the phylactery.
Yeah, I am fully expecting one of the other players to sit there and be like, oh shit, you can't fuck anymore at the table.
That's going to be Dan saying it.
Or Casey, because she just blurts shit out sometimes, and it's always fucking hilarious. So,
well, I'll check back on Monday to see who said it.
Well, it'll just be Charlie and Megan who will learn this information, and then we're going to have to wait a week for them to all get brought together. But it's going to be just a big 5-hour combat against a coven of hags with trolls and ettins and shit on their side. So it's going to be fucking grueling. And then hopefully we're going to take a break for 4 months, because I don't know if anybody knows, I'm going to get married, and I'm going to go live down in the States for 4 months. So D&D is on pause, and I'm hoping that in the meantime they will be able to stop and think and put some of the clues together. Although the last time I did this, Dan fucking ruined one of my big plot surprises, and I got to be careful with what I tell them. But anyway, back to your subplots. You don't have anything set up for Andy yet.
For this campaign, no, I do not have anything set up. I know that his backstory involves he left a cult, and now that we're in this temple of this they essentially call him the dead god, because 100 years ago, all of the clerics of this god woke up with no powers, kind of like your campaign builder started.
Yeah.
That's essentially what happened with just this one deity. But now as we're in the temple and they find out that since they interacted with one of the orbs he stole, they have a reflection of him in them. Andy's character's like finding religion. So I kind of want to do a balance of, I am thinking of trying to see if he's okay with me bringing his old cult back into the plot at some point. I buy the books one at a time because I don't want to spend, the $20 to $30 times 6 books all at once.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know where a good point to fit that in would be. Maybe the cult's new in town when they're meeting Joe's family.
Is this cult the one that's written into the books? Is it the same
No.
cult that Andy chose?
No. Well, and if it is, he didn't tell me. So, and I don't think he did that much combing through of the player's guide. Probably not because the back campaign are essentially weird lizard dragon people that live underground, and Andy is not one of those.
Okay. All right. So you could have have you seen The Mummy?
I have not. I know you can shame me real quick.
I don't need to shame you about this. You should watch The Mummy. You just take a second and watch it in all of its 1999 glory or whenever it was made. Everyone on it is unnecessarily attractive except for one character and maybe two characters. But there is a cult of protectors essentially that are against the main characters for a little while, only to discover that they were just trying to protect this artifact from being disturbed or this site from being disturbed. And now that it's been disturbed, well, I guess we got to team up and defeat this mummy now, right? That might be a way in for Andy's cult, where they start off as enemies, trying to stop your characters from discovering a detail or whatever it is, and you'd introduce them maybe at the beginning of book 3, right, with a couple of little interactions with one or two members or an assassin in the night or something, or they find out that, hey, that weird guy in the black cloak was asking a lot of questions about you guys last night, right? It can be stuff like that, and then slowly build up this intrigue or even animosity to then turn out to be, hey, we're actually on the same side. We weren't sure what side you guys were on at first, right? Or we had to stop you from doing the whatever, right?
Okay, I like that. I like that.
So that is a subplot that does a slow roll that will eventually become part of the plot, because it's the only thing it's going to do is give a couple of NPCs that are not in the books to fight alongside the players at a couple of key moments later on, right? Other than that, it's a handful of social things, some random encounters, a little bit of intrigue here and there, but it's very much in the background. And if you give them all like the same tattoo, so whenever they go to like loot the body or investigate or whatever, they find like tattooed over the throat is the emblem of whatever. Like, oh, that's weird. And then it happens again 8 sessions later, and then it happens 6 sessions later, and then 4 sessions, and it becomes more frequent until it actually pops off and becomes the point of one session for a while while you focus on that. And then like that might be a good slow roll, a good way to bring that subplot kind of into the fold.
I like that. I'm stealing that. Although you kind of mentioned it to give it to me, so I'm taking it.
And remember, you don't have to do it with investigating bodies. It can be the emblem is on a scroll in a language that they don't read, or it can be
Painted on the wall in blood. I mean, it's a cult after all.
yeah, exactly. And you just have to know ahead of time. Just make the decision early, and you'll have to talk to him about this. Like, what's the deal with the cult? What's their thing? What's their emblem? What's their methodology? We give offerings of food, or we do animal sacrifices, or we do human sacrifices? Like, or we steal souls from the innocent? Like, what level of cult are we dealing with, right? So you'll need these details so you can slowly add them in. But I would sit down and interview him kind of on the side one day, take a bunch of notes, and then don't bring it up for 3 weeks or 3 sessions or whatever. And then slowly introduce bits and pieces. Let him kind of forget about it, right?
Oh yeah. Well, and we play every other week, so if I don't bring it up for 3 sessions, that's a month and a half.
Yeah, which is about the right amount of time, honestly, when it comes to mining your players for details, when it comes to plot points or subplots that you want to involve in your campaign, and then letting it kind of sit by the wayside for a while. If you wait 5 months, he will have forgotten. Like, it's so far in the past that this won't mean anything to him anymore. But if it's like 6 to 8 weeks away, trigger words and phrases and pictures and emblems and iconography, this will still trigger and be like, wait a minute, I know something about this, right?
Even if I don't know exactly what, it's ringing a bell.
Yes. And this is why, just for the record, D&D players taking shitty notes is the best use of this, right? If you can look over the DM screen and see that they've written down big blue star with eight pointed cross, so they'll be like, okay, that's not at all what I said, but that's neat. I will use that wording later on because that's how it sticks in their brain. And so the next time I will say it this way, and they will go, oh shit, what is this? And they will go flipping through their page, through their books until they find this note, which has no other further details on it. They didn't write anything down. Like fuck, and then they'll take really good notes for about half an hour, and then they will fuck it up again.
Yeah, but sometimes that's just the little bit that you need to drive that hook in.
So what about your Eberron campaign? Did you want to dig into that, or do you want to stay on your Extinction Curse campaign for now?
Yeah, no, I think with the Extinction Curse, just having the one subplot for each of them in a pre-written adventure is going to be plenty to get it worked in and get it going.
Yes.
I do want to kind of come up with some ideas. I have a spreadsheet where I have kind of listed every four-ish levels, kind of how I want them to go through the campaign. With I have the problem to solve, the big bad of that section of it, the main enemy type, and the main location that they're in.
Yep.
But I do want to work some subplots into it. So let me just read you the list of 9 ideas that I have. Some of them I have worked in already, but we'll take it from there.
Sorry, and this is for Extinction Curse or Eberron?
This is for Eberron.
Perfect. Okay.
So my 9 ideas for Eberron, I have the first one is devils. Then I have dragon marked houses. I mean, you're in Eberron, you have to. A political assassination cover-up. The Mournland, because again, Eberron. Big scary undead, be it a lich, a vampire, whatever. I want a friendly mimic. I do want to bring out the Order of the Emerald Claw. The final big bad of the campaign, I have to explain for this next idea to make sense. I'm going to describe the morning as the overlords were trying to free Kyber from Eberron, the prison, and that's what caused the morning. So I was thinking of having dragons helping them with the overlord issue. And I want the Underdark, which is Kyber. So those are my 9 ideas. Anything sticking out to you?
Yeah, you've got some that are just obviously going to be tied together. For example, you've got a political assassination cover-up and the Order of the Emerald Claw.
Absolutely.
Those two are the same point, right? And this is a perfect example of being able to drop a subplot in very early and very subtly. You fight a couple of guys with this kind of weapon or this kind of cloak, and then they'll run into them 3 or 4 more times, like, oh, these motherfuckers. And then there'll be an assassination, like, oh shit, we're dealing with this, and then discover, wait a minute, that's the same cloak that the other guys were wearing, right? And they'll be able to kind of piece the bits and pieces together there.
Absolutely. I think I like that. I have been in both Extinction Curse, and I think I will do it again in Eberron. I've been running a DM PC. My intent is to be more of a support character. I ended up changing my character in Extinction Curse to be a barbarian, and would you know that's not very supporty? Although I did 78 damage in 1 attack last session.
Jesus.
Yeah, it was a critical hit, and we have crit cards, and it said triple damage. Triple damage at 2d10, 2d12 plus 12. 78's what I got.
God, that is fucking wild.
Yeah, well, fortunately, the enemy had 135 hit points. We're level 7, by the way. So I want to do way more support focus. So I was thinking for my DMPC for this game, I was going to be an awakened animal. Still on the fence on that. Right now I'm sitting on a penguin because we're starting in the Lazar Principalities.
Can I make a recommendation?
But I wanted to, yeah.
Be some sort of baboon. Get opposable thumbs. Be able to wear armor.
Well, to be fair, so Pathfinder officially released an awakened animal ancestry, which is race for you D&D players. And it specifically says with the awakened animal that yes, you can grab things like you have thumbs no matter what, just for balance purposes.
Okay. All right.
So it literally says you can speak verbally, stand on two legs, wear, hold, wield, and use items.
Okay, cool.
What limbs you use to manipulate items and how many are determined by you and your DM.
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. Look, as long as you are able to pick things up to be able to administer a health potion when both of the
Oh, yeah.
players are unconscious, like that's okay, right? Otherwise, you're gonna find yourself handicapped.
Yeah. Well, and I want to play as the cleric. So I was thinking of doing a cleric, and I was specifically thinking of my little deity to be the blood of Vol, since I one day went from being a regular penguin to a penguin with sentience. So obviously I have a spark of divinity in me. Hello.
That's
So
fun.
then to run into the Order of the Emerald Claw with my DMPC being a member of the blood of Vol.
Yeah, which is for those people that aren't familiar with Eberron, the Blood of Vol is a cult run by a vampire, but nobody's certain that it's a vampire. That's just the rumor. But yes, it's a vampire.
Or is it? That's for the DM to decide. But
Um,
yes, it's a vampire.
okay, so here I'm looking at this list, and I'm kind of I think I see where your plot is going, as well as the subplots to bring into it. But first, let me touch really quickly on the three details that you've got here. So you have a political assassination cover up with the Emerald Claw, right? That's a big deal. Who has hired the Emerald Claw? It can be your overlord or a high-powered devil. Like you can tie that into something else, right? But you said you wanted a big undead. I mean, the leader of the Blood of Vol
Yeah,
is a
yeah.
vampire. Like there it is. That's and that might be an opportunity for your DMPC to end up bowing out late game, either murdered by this vampire or turning sides, or I no longer believe I need to go, like whatever it is. You can have this moment of this crisis, tragedy, whatever it is, remove them from the game and leave your two players going, oh shit, we got to go into the end game on our own. And that could
Without a
be,
dedicated healer.
yeah, and that could be a real big, like, scary moment for them.
Very true. Until they go make friends with dragons, and then they should be fine.
Yes, and then they ought to be okay. But that would definitely be a plot point that I would look at with when I want to incorporate a big, powerful, scary frenemy. I guess a question mark. How is this going to play out? I guess that would depend on how the players interact with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, I like that. I'm stealing that. Although you gave it to me, I'm taking it. um,
When it comes to the friendly mimic, I have done this in the past. I've got a couple of friendly mimics running around in my world. They are more concerned with eating and being like taken care of, almost as like very needy pets. Have you seen Little Shop of Horrors?
oh, I muted myself instead of unmuting myself. Yes, no, actually, I have never seen Little Shop of Horrors, but I was in the play The Little Shop of Horrors for a community theater when I was younger. So no, I haven't seen it, but I am familiar with the story.
Okay, first of all, that is amazing. And I Little Shop of Horrors is one of my favorite stories of all time. For some reason, it just clicks with me. The camp and the horror and everything else. Did your play get the happy ending and the sad ending?
Oh gosh, this was so many years ago. I was in high school when it happened. I think they did the happy ending.
Yeah, there's the ending where they kill Audrey too and save everybody and they live happily ever after. And then there's the ending in the Rick Moranis movie where this was the, I think, director's cut ending that they filmed, and then it was deemed too harsh for theaters. But now it's the only thing that's available on DVD. Where nope, they both get eaten and the plants take over the world. So
I don't remember. I don't remember. It
anyway,
was a while ago.
if you haven't sat down to watch the Rick Moranis version, it is absolutely freaking amazing and it's totally worth your hour and a half. I probably do an annual rewatch of it just when I feel in my bones it has been too long since I've seen and heard, because it's a wonderful musical. So
Exactly. So what I'm getting from this is when I have my friendly mimic, I have to find a way to squeeze in them saying "Feed me, Seymour."
yes, absolutely. Will your players get that?
Probably. And by get that, I mean I will get eye rolls.
That is, look, that feeds the dungeon master. That is the only thing I need, is the eye rolls. So
Well, you don't have to, well, at least not yet. You don't have to go to bed with any of your players afterwards. So just you wait, mister.
So you had political assassination cover up in Emerald Claw, which is a really cool side quest that I feel like you could very easily just wrap into an overall plot as well. So the subplot builds to the Emerald Claw into a political assassination cover up, probably in Sharn, I would guess. If you're going to kill and if you're going to assassinate, anybody.
Probably. My boyfriend has requested because I tried to run a little campaign I used the level 1 starter campaign starter thing from Eberron Rising from the Last War.
Yeah.
And right as I literally wrapped up that pre-written spot, one of the players that I had invited stopped showing up, so it folded.
Mm.
And after that, my boyfriend was like, I don't understand, Sharn. Can we never go back?
It is, the geography is so fucking complicated. The way that I saw it done best, I caught it on a live stream, was they came into the docks of it, which of course are in Lower Sharn with all the districts down there. And so they provided a map of, here are the districts. You would know this because you'll have a guide through Sharn, but it's just the bottom of it, right? Like, here's where you may want to go for things. And they're like, well, where are the nobles? You don't have permission or access or the cards needed to go up to the next level of Sharn. And so they would have to find their way, bribe or sneak or whatever, to get up the towers. So they were just stuck in kind of a 2D map for a while. And then the next one would unlock. So they would feel like actually different cities. And
Okay.
that was a little bit easier to swallow than, here are the 900 districts of Sharn, right? Because it's so big.
Yeah. Well, and I'm thinking if it's coming to a political assassination, and I want to start them in the Lazar Principalities. So, Sharn, of course, for those of you that haven't studied the map like it's your religion, like I have, that's opposite sides of the entire continent.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little bit of travel, right?
It's a little bit of travel. To be fair, I did want to incorporate going into the Underdark, and in the Underdark, Kyber, as they call it for Eberron, is full of pocket dimensions. So it would be very easy for me to send them into the Underdark in the Lazar Principalities, and for them to literally turn around and come back out, and voila, they're literally 2 days travel from Sharn. Very easy for me to do.
Or you could just hand wave ship travel, right? Like, it's the Lazar Principalities. You're dealing with pirates and ships anyway, right?
Well, yeah, that's fair. Although I think if I was going to take them from the Lazar Principalities to Sharn, I'd put them on an airship, and of course, it's Eberron. So what's going to happen?
You crash the airship.
I
That's the
crash the
point.
airship.
Yep.
So that's going to have to happen. Hold on. I need to write this down before I forget it.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if you don't want to write it down, this will be available online soon enough. So you will be able to listen
I
back to
am
this.
I'm on book 2 of 6. I'm looking at like a total of 3 years for this campaign.
Of course, yeah.
I'ma have time.
Yeah.
Although meeting every other week, 3 years for a 1 to 20 campaign seems very on par.
Yes. So,
So
okay, so we've tied in the big undead, which is the vampire for the blood of Vol. The friendly mimic, I feel, is NPC, right?
yes,
They ended up rescuing mine. Their names were Fillmore, because mimics were hungry and they needed to fill them. Fillmore was the male, and Phyllis, because Phyllis was the female.
I
So
love that.
yeah. I thought Philip would be too on the fucking nose, and then I just did it anyway. So anyway, I had them just be very needy NPCs that could turn into things to get out of combat and out of responsibilities and could be just carried around. Because mimics are sticky, you can just stick them to the side of the cart or let them like hang out on the ceiling in the pirate ship. Or Dan's playing a furbolg, so he just stuck one of them to his back and kept walking, right? So
Yeah, no, I love it. Said it, oh, an enemy's boarding your ship. I think I might want to do the friendly mimic pretty early because that seems like a very weird, wacky pirate Lazar Principality thing.
yeah.
Oh no, they're trying to board your ship and they put a plank in between your ships. Sets mimic on the end of plank. I have other things to worry about.
Just the hungry mouth that opens up, right? So I love it.
Or
And you
you go to board them and you set a plank and the plank facing them sprouts a mouth.
so good. I did send a mimic galleon after my party last campaign. So it's in my world, mimics can merge with each other to become larger items. So it was like 750 mimics all merged. The colony had gone unchecked and it was now
Just like a
big squid.
hive mind of mimics.
Yeah, and then they would like shoot cannonballs that were also mimics, and the ship would get slightly smaller. Like it was,
I
it was a little wild. Not how mimics are
love that.
traditionally used, but a lot of fun. Um, the next thing that I'm looking at is the Dragon Mark houses. I think that if you're going to play an Eberron, one of the players will end up with the Dragon Mark house, right?
I hope
Unless
so, but again, I only have two, and I'm the Eberron nerd of the group.
Yeah, but it's going to give them special powers and a lot of ease to move through the land. If you sell the idea of Dragon Mark houses in the first place, and they're not already caught up on the idea of Warforge, Kalishtar, Shifters, right? Like, because if they go that direction, then they're probably not going to do Dragon Mark houses, right? So,
Yeah, I think I might be able to get them sold. Although, to be fair, in Extinction Curse, Joe is a frog person, and Andy is a somewhat related to snakes person, but also not snakes. If he knew, I think his ancestry is related to snakes, but he's terrified of snakes. I don't know. He just has poisonous blood.
that's fun.
It is fun, although trying to sell them on play something normal that could have a dragon mark might be the hard part.
Well, that might be one of your another regular NPC that just follows them around, right? Giving them one of the dragon mark of hell, what's it called? The one that does all the travel.
Are we talking the lightning rail or the
Yeah.
airships?
Should be the same dragon mark, isn't it?
No, those are two different ones. It's Orion is I hold on, let me just pull this up. I know House Orion is the lightning rail. And oh gosh, they call themselves the Korrivar. They're half elves because half elf is racist. You guys said that.
Yep.
They're the ones in charge of the boats and the airships. God, okay, it's literally going to drive me crazy. I'm pulling it up.
It's the one that begins with L.
Lyrander, you're completely correct.
Yeah. I kept trying to say Lysander, and I'm like, that is not fucking right.
It was close enough that it got me there. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, and Orion, you're right, is the airships. Yeah, I would give them one or the other, especially starting in the Lazar principalities. And I mean, you give them,
Lyrander.
yeah, and you start there, right? So,
Yeah.
um, okay, so that brings me to you're going to work in your Dragon Mark houses. And especially if you've got a political assassination, clearly the political person, the target, is going to be of a Dragon Mark house.
Absolutely. Well, and I was almost thinking, I didn't jot this down, didn't say it to you, but I was almost thinking the whole, oh, the overlords are trying to free Kyber. I was almost had the thought of the 12, the ruling group of
Yeah.
all of the houses has been corrupted.
I like it. Okay, and so this kind of brings me to my next point, because I don't think we're dealing with subplots here. You have one big plot that have tied together four, in my opinion anyway, four of the 9 points that you had, five if you include the Dragon Mark houses being corrupted. So the way that I picture this is your showdown is probably going to be either in the heart of the Mournland or down in Kyber, right? In the Underdark area.
Yeah, and if it's in Kyber, they got there from the Mournland.
Right. So they've gone down there somewhere else and they're popping up in the Mournland, depending on how you want to play that, right? So But this is going to be because the Dragonmark houses have been corrupted by, well, I mean, you got devils. You said devils is going to be one of them.
I did. And I do want the overlords. And what are they but the biggest, strongest, baddest devils?
Yep, because in Eberron, for anyone that's not familiar, all fiends are just devils, right? Even the demons and everything else are just like it's one category. They don't split it in Eberron. So with the overlords being the most powerful ones, and then I guess you're going to head to Argonason at some point and befriend dragons, or will the dragons come to you?
Oh no, I was thinking of going to Argonason. Argonason, oh, that's off of. Hold on, which direction is Argonason in? That's off of the Demon Waste, isn't it?
I think so. It's been a while. The only one that I know for certain is Zendrik's. Zendrik. Damn it, Dave, you've got me saying
Which is Zendrik is just south of Sharn.
yes. Yeah, I distinctly remember that. So let me take one look. I'm trying to load the my D&D Beyond here. I am on record as hating D&D Beyond, and since they've been releasing all of this online only content, I've come to terms with it, but I'm still not happy about it.
Of course, I go to Argonason in Rising from the Last War, and it's just like, oh, here's all the cool things that you could do with Argonason, but where is it?
That's the big problem that I have with all of the fifth edition campaign settings that have been published is they're not really good at giving you a idea of the like overworld map. You'll get one version of it and only one. So Zendrik is to the south, Arenal, where the elves are to like this, it's like the southeast. Argonason is southeast of Arenal. So, and then Sarlona is kind of on the opposite side of Corvair. I guess it would closest would be the Lazar Principalities. So Argonason is, I don't want to say the other side of the world, but it's like a third of the world away.
Well, I'll just do that DM thing where I say they can go back home to the Lazar Principalities and go to Argonason from there. I kind of want them to go to Argonason first in an airship. Full well knowing that they're going to the Dragon Island and they're in an airship, and then out of the fog in the clouds comes the dragon.
I think that's absolutely phenomenal. But this brings us to, your dragons versus overlords. My big thing is I would probably set it the final big battle in the Mournland because you're going to end up with dragons in the sky fighting in your behalf. It's going to be harder to get the dragons underground.
Well, and I do want to have them have their time of teehee. We're adventuring in the Mournland and everything's weird.
Yeah. Yeah, like yes. I feel like the big battle is Kyber gonna rise? Is that gonna be the big thing?
I think I found a stat block a while ago that I think I actually sent you when we were thinking about my last episode, and you're like, no, we're just gonna nerd out about Eberron.
Yeah.
I think I found one that's, let me get it pulled back up. Because we chat so much, it won't take too long.
I'm curious to know what CR.
Well, I couldn't tell you what CR, but I can tell you that it's a level 23 creature.
Okay, so CR 23.
It's called an Elder Worm Wraith.
Jesus.
Yeah, doesn't that sound scary?
It absolutely
an Elder Worm Wraith. So it's very much like a ghost zombie. It's an undead Elder Worm, essentially. And I felt like, what better for Kyber is currently in the process of escaping the prison that is Eberron than to use something called an Elder Worm Wraith.
Yeah. I'm looking at the whole idea now, and it feels to me like with the Dragonmark houses pulled into it, and you're starting the Lazar Principalities, and you're going to be heading over to Argonason at some point, and into Sharn at some point, and through the Mournland. Are you going to do a tour of Corvair? Are you doing like the whole main continent, or are you just going to hit the highlights? Like
I don't think I want to do the full one. Mostly just because there's too much that you can do in all of them. Although we could go to the neighboring country, to the Lazar Principalities. Adam, what's that called again?
The fucking Roarholds. Fuck.
The Roarholds.
My least favorite D&D word. Roar. Fuck.
Yep. That's why I made you say it. You're welcome. I do think they would enjoy the Talenta Plains because, again, dinosaurs.
Yes, absolutely. My thought process here is okay, we've obviously got the Mournland going into Kyber. Dragons versus Overlords is the great big like tier 4 battles. Devils having influence over the Dragon Mark houses. That's probably going to be tied into the political assassination cover up, right?
Yeah.
And the
Oh,
lead
look at
into
that. I
that,
said let's do subplots, and it looks like it's all tying into the regular plot, which, to be fair, I do like a good subplot that is tying in or at least adjacent to.
but what I would do is have the Emerald Claw look like a subplot, act as a subplot for the first 10 levels before you start to get to political assassinations, right?
Oh, yeah. I'm thinking like level 12 to 15 for the political assassination here.
Yeah, because you're going to solve the assassination, but then you got to solve the cover up, right? So it should take a while to work through that, but you can be dangling the Emerald Claw in front of them for a while. And then you've got Big Undead as an absolute, like this one does feel like it's a subplot. It is its own separate thing that will impact one of the NPCs or the DMPC, as the case may be, in a big way. But what you don't have is inciting incident, right? Something that's going to bring them all together at the beginning.
Yeah.
And
I was thinking just like, hey, you guys are pirates. You're a member of this new pirate crew.
I have a separate idea for you.
Lay it on me.
So Kyber being released is probably one of the main subjects of the Draconic Prophecy,
I would agree.
which means the Draconic Prophecy will probably name your players, your player characters, which means
Ooh.
you can start off with assassination attempts one on one against a thug, right? That you've dressed up to be an assassin in the night, right? And then they find a letter or something with their, or like a wanted poster with their picture and like a price tag on it, and then where to meet to collect this in the Lazar Principalities. So you can run 2 solo combats with them at the very beginning, session 1, and then have them travel there. You can narrate the travel to where they need to be to meet up, only to discover that the same thing happened to the other person. And these 2 are destined to be a linchpin in whether or not Kyber is released.
I was going to say, let me furiously jot this down, but you're right. I'll just listen to the episode. I'll have to get over the sound of my own voice, but I'll do it.
Um, so but that is a through plot. Every time that your players go off or on a side quest, or they get distracted by going shopping for 5 hours or whatever it is, you can have more assassins show up. You can have, and like, they're not the Emerald Claw, they're their own thing, right? They would be somehow tied to the Draconic Prophecy. Maybe that's the dragons sending them because they've interpreted the Draconic Prophecy to say these guys are going to release Kyber instead of these guys are going to stop Kyber, right?
They misread it. It's very hard to read straight, okay? Dragons have spent their whole life reading this thing and they still don't understand it.
Exactly. And like or it has been manipulated to be there are, if such and such omens pop off, then it means that it's going to go in this direction, and the devils have been showing them false omens, right?
Yeah, actually, that's gonna be. I think the Emerald Claw is gonna be the subplot because one thing I remember about the Emerald Claw is they are known for their mildly terroristic attacks.
Yep.
That airship that's gonna go down. Oh, guess who? Guess who took the airship down?
Well, sure, yeah, absolutely. Like, it feels to me like we've built an overall plot here, but between the Blood of Vol, a political assassination cover up that's happening, that's going to like unravel into be the Dragon Mark houses. Like, these are going to be the subplots that all feed in, and you're not going to know what else you want to do until, okay, so here's a subplot for you that you've already come up with: is we're getting on an airship, we're going to Argonason, right? That doesn't have to be a part of the plot. It is just, and it's not quite just a set piece. They're not going to be on the airship for one session and be done, right? So it is this whole like, first of all, we need to find someone with an airship that's going to be friendly to us or cheap if we charter them or whatever. And then we're going to have to deal with the crew for an extended period of time because we're crossing the world for this. So there's going to be a lot of fun opportunities. And on top of that, the Blood of Vol is going to be interested for whatever reason. You've got some Dragon Mark houses will be friendlier than others, and then the subplots of whatever your players are bringing to the table, right? Because Eberron is so rich and so flavorful that even if they just choose, I am a Warforge, I can come up with 100,000 subplots around a Warforge, right? You were
I'm
built
just
for,
gonna, yeah, I'm gonna give you a docent, and there's the entire subplot on my own.
yeah, right? Like, what are you doing with this? You were built for war, and now there's no war. What are you doing? If they end up choosing a changeling, this changeling is going to be at this, like, in the spotlight. How does that feel, right? If you've got them picking a Kalishtar or an Artificer or a Shifter or any of the big like Eberron tentpole identities, right? Even like a Dragon Mark, that there is, it comes with so much baggage. Every one of these things, which means that you've got entire subplots to mine from
Oh
just
yeah.
just the character building side of Eberron in ways that the other classes and subclasses and most of the other species, now it's going to be called, they're not as evocative. Some of them are, but some of them are just, I'm a dwarf, I'm a halfling, I'm a Goliath, right? An Asimar comes with it built in. A Tiefling comes with it built in. But an Eberron, it all comes built in, right?
Oh yeah.
So, are you planning on doing um, any of the monstrous, like Drome, or what's the one with
I do like the idea of Drome just because the Daughters of Sorakel. I will tell you, the second that I say these three hag sisters run a country, my players are interested.
of course. I mean, that's the thing that's gonna drag me in. But like, you also have the Shadow Marches and Cabera and Dargoon with all the goblinoids that are trying to sort out their political stuff. It feels like, again, Zalargo is another one. Like, there's so much going on in these places. I almost want to just kind of mention them on the way through, right?
That's
Like,
fair.
I don't want to do too much overloading unless it's close on the map to do a side quest or a quick little subplot to duck over into this area, see something new and interesting, and then move back. Because there's one thing I know is that when you start playing Eberron, it's hard to stop playing Eberron.
Mm, I'm okay with that.
I figured you might be.
I hope my players are okay with that.
Well, let me tell you something. I've got this campaign is probably going to run, the one I'm doing is another year and a half. And then I've low key promised Dave that we were doing something Eberron, and I've low key promised Mieka and Casey that we would do Theros. So I'm probably going to be stuck running an Eberron campaign here sometime in the next 5 years. And I kind of wanted to save it to last because once we go there, like, Theros is not completely fleshed out. We can go do a Greek themed, piety based D&D campaign, but I feel like my players are going to run through that pretty quickly once they've played out their Greek fantasy of being Persephone and falling in love with Hades or whatever it is
I
that
mean, it's fun, but it
but
doesn't have what Eberron gives you.
Eberron is so rich. The more you dig, the more you find.
And the more you just want to build off of.
Yeah. So for Dave's birthday, which was 2 months ago, the whole D&D group came together and we spent $80 and bought him 6 Eberron novels. The two highest rated trilogies that were out there that are no longer in print. We had to go scour used bookstores and order them online from collectors and stuff. And it was not cheap and it was very frustrating. But he said that, and one of them is written right by Keith Baker himself, right? So one of the trilogies, he says they're so full of fucking lore, and none of them nothing he's read so far has made it so that the world has progressed in a way that you, like, history has not changed. You can't play in this area anymore because they've solved the draconic prophecy or they killed a daughter of Sorkel. It's none of that. It's all just like adventurers, high adventure, and political intrigue and shit. And he says the novels are so entertaining. I can't wait to get my hands on them. I bring this up to you because if you have the opportunity, you should look them up and buy them because apparently they're really good.
I will absolutely look those up.
I'm hoping to be able to do a legend lore with Dave about them one day, but we'll see. So
Okay, maybe I'll just crash that so I can be another voice in the background going, "Oh my god, that's so cool."
fair enough. All right, note to self: add Scott to the legend lore. Um, But yeah, okay. So there are all sorts of subplots. Eberron is rich for subplots, because there's so much shit going on, right?
Yeah. Well, and a big problem with this is of the four types of subplots that you explained, we had exposition, which I love your idea of you all have a hit out on you. Meet here for your reward. Love that. Great exposition subplot. And then you had backstory subplot. I am like still running a campaign that'll still last for like 2 years. Um, I don't have any of that right now. And then for the DM, you had for the DM subplot. Honestly, playing in Eberron is for me. Couldn't tell you what it is that we need to add there, but as the time comes, I might come up with something. And secret plot subplot seems like that's everything that we talked about. I feel like we task failed successfully. Oh,
um,
let's come up with subplots. Actually, these are all just secretly the main plot.
well, and that's my thing about subplots is 9 times out of 10, I want them to run parallel to the plot and to glance off of it a number of times until the two things stick, right?
Yeah.
I like to do what was a good example when I was playing Curse of Strahd way back in the day when Terry was DMing. Jamie was the only person I'd met before we actually played. I showed up on session 1 only knowing Jamie, and we did not do a session 0. So I showed up with a character just built, and so I created my dwarven cleric. He's a life cleric because I knew that there was no healing in the party, and as a seasoned DM and D&D player, and everybody else was relatively new, I knew that okay, we need a healer, especially if we're going into Barovia. So so I built Bargus, my dwarf, and Jamie built Boar, his barbarian. And a barbarian doesn't have any reason to be in fucking Curse of Strahd, and I kind of knew that. So what I did was I created this subplot on the side, which was tied to my backstory, where I had a vision every night as a child in an orphanage of a orc raiding party burning down the orphanage and killing all of the children sometime in the future when I'm an adult. And then I started to get visions of Jamie's character coming to be a savior that could save the orphanage if he appears on time. So I've been questing to find him. And when I found him, he said, I don't give a fuck about an orphanage. And I went, you don't yet, but someday you will. And until then, I will keep you alive. And that was all the plot that I needed to stay invested in my campaign. And Terry, who was a brand new DM, didn't have the ability to manage that. So we kind of left that alone until I took over as DM. We finished Curse of Strahd, and I rolled it out into my homebrew campaign, and Bargus became an NPC. And then there was a lot of stuff for Jamie to hear about. With the at one point his character died, and Bargus ended up holding a gigantic religious ceremony, and everyone thought it was a funeral until he cut off his own beard and slit his own throat into the wound in Jamie's character's chest, and that brought his character back to life. And then suddenly he's haunted by Bargus's voice and judgment, because Bargus was lawful good, but Boar, the barbarian, was chaotic neutral. So he has his conscience in his mind saying, really, is that the best way that we can go about this? And this plot, it did not tie in with anything else, but it pushed him in a direction where when it finally became time that he had to save this orphanage, and he got there a little too late, and the orphanage was already on fire, and the kids were being like dragged out to be slaughtered. He went into full enrage. He was standing up at the table. He was so worked up about it. Had nothing to do with the main plot, but it started off as little bits and pieces early and slowly built its way up to this set piece encounter that I kind of knew I wanted to run into eventually anyway. I didn't know that I'd be DMing. I didn't know I'd hit it with the homebrew. But the moment I took over, I went, we are going to find this orphanage just at the exact moment where this shit is happening. And Jamie, who was pretty dude bro about a lot of shit, was actually very emotionally invested about this. And that's, I guess, the thing that I would say to you moving forward in the campaign that you're building now with the Extinction Curse. I try not to tell people to buy books because I never know what anybody's economic status is, how flush the bank account is. But I highly recommend picking up book 6 before you pick up book 4 and knowing what
Yeah.
the end is, so you can reverse engineer these little subplots to build to this point.
Well, and fortunately, I have found a podcast. I know it's not you guys, but you guys don't play Pathfinder, so I had to find a new one. Uh, um, I found a podcast that has run through this campaign in its entirety. So I am able to go ahead and give that a listen to pick up the main story beats. The problem is, it's 100 episodes at 2 hours apiece.
That is prolific. Believe me, I understand the pain of that. What do you want to give it a shout out?
Yeah, it's Dice Will Roll. They say they're the queerest Pathfinder podcast. Every single one of them is on the LGBT spectrum in some way or another. An absolute joy to listen to. They're there for the vibes. They're there to be silly, but Derry, the DM, also gets them nice and serious when they need to be serious.
That's always a sign of a good DM when they can flip back and forth seamlessly and have a good balance between them, right? Like that's as a dungeon master,
absolutely.
That's the goal for me as well. Is some days I just want to goof off and have Fillmore the mimic, and other days I need to plot to drop revelations about phylacteries being bloodlines, right? Like there's
exactly.
Yeah.
No, I got real jealous though because Extinction Curse wasn't their first campaign, and on their Discord channel, wouldn't you know, but one of their fans on their Discord channel is the woman who wrote book 2.
Oh shit.
So the DM got to have a conversation with her saying, hey, these are my ideas. You literally wrote this book. What do you think?
That's super cool.
To have access to something like that.
Yeah, that's super cool. But back to my point, you should look at the end point and work your way backwards. That's kind of what we did for the big Eberron thing. Because I sat down, well, Kyber, Dragons versus Overlords, Overlords and Devils, Kyber and Mournland. Yeah, this is all the same thing, right? And once I knew what the end game was, I was able to work back, and we managed to reverse engineer it to be, all right, what's our starting point, right?
Yeah.
So
I like the starting point you came up with. It's a little better than, hey, you guys are pirates, create characters.
Yeah, I love the mystery in the night that draws people in. I did that with my last campaign too, where they all got very similar notes in very different handwriting that were like attached to their door, to their front door, or like the door in the inn or whatnot, by a dagger into the wood. And and I handed out manila envelopes with these notes that I'd written, and I tea stained and I burned them and the whole thing. And within it were clues about puzzles they needed to solve later and so on and so forth. But like that knife in the door with a message is such an evocative way to start a campaign, to drag everybody together instead of just, you happen to be here, you've been fucking summoned, right? Whether you like it or not, this is coming for you. So
I like it. And then once they actually survive their first encounter with their thug, maybe they'll meet my character too.
Yeah, but maybe your character is also part of this prophecy, and like it's the three of them together, right? And then as these omens pop off to push either releasing Kyber or defeating Kyber, one way or the other, the different omens might be the plot points that you guys are having to navigate through it, and the political assassination might be one of them that they just didn't get there in time, right? And so if your character ends up dying, then that could be one of the omens when 3 became 2 or something, right? So
I like it.
So when it comes to subplots, I guess the big common theme that we've talked about today is starting early and starting subtle. And not every subplot needs to become a full subplot. Sometimes it can just be a side quest. Sometimes it will just be a decision, a set piece, an encounter that has no forward momentum because of the players. And that's fine too. I try not to hang my hat on every subplot, which is why my players talk about how real my world feels, because everywhere they go, there's another way in. There's another subplot that's going to eventually tie into the main plot. But the secret is that's because I throw absolutely fucking everything at the wall to see what sticks. And I've got a general idea of how I can improv and riff off of my players in the moment, and then sit down with my flow charts and notes and maps and go, all right,
work it out later.
How am I going to do this? Yeah. So a lot of my subplots are done very much grabbing one detail that is going to be interesting to them or interesting to me with a solid hook and the potential for further storytelling down the road, right? That's also how they always end up with so many fucking NPCs, right? Every time that they're running anybody that needs rescuing, that NPC globs onto them and won't stop until they find safety. And they end up with dozens of them because I have so many of these little random encounters, and safety is so fleeting in my world.
Yeah, like the purple penguin that's going to appear 250 feet in the air.
Oh, at this point, those days have passed, and that penguin has popped in and landed. I have not bothered to roll yet because we've not gone back. But the moment they go back, I will absolutely be rolling that before the session and determining how mad the penguin is, or whether or not one of the other NPCs are going to bring them over to the gravesite, and so they can see the tombstone of where the penguin is buried, so that they can feel like, "Oops, we made an oopsie."
I can't wait to see how this plays out.
Are there any other final thoughts that you have about subplots? Any questions? Any ideas? Anything before we wrap this episode up?
Oh yeah, the one last thing you said, not every sometimes it can be a side quest, but then on the other side of the coin, sometimes what the players think is a side quest ends up being a side plot. The ramifications, they're gonna need to see them.
Yes. And there's always, see, and this is the thing that I love about well-written adventures that are like the published ones. And this is the make or break of why I don't like a lot of the stuff that's written, is when you go from chapter to chapter, there's almost no cohesive through plot. There should be consequence to fucking everything. This is why I really like Waterdeep Dragon Heist, because there are a bunch of the Lords of Waterdeep and a bunch of factions that you are trying to stay on the good side of, and the decisions you make impact that, and the DM tracks it on a chart so that you know how you can, or like what resources you have later in the campaign. It's also why I don't have a whole lot of patience.
I mean, that's going to be me with the Dragon Mark houses.
Yes, and tracking that's going to be incredibly interesting and a lot of fun. Are you going to do 5th edition, or are you just going to run the Eberron world with Pathfinder?
I'm going to do the Eberron world in Pathfinder. I found a nifty little document that Pathfinder, well, so Eberron came out in 3rd edition,
Yeah.
and then 3.5 was massively popular. And then Pathfinder 1st edition was the closest thing to 3.5 when 4th edition came out.
Yeah.
So a lot of people moved to Pathfinder, stayed with Pathfinder for 2nd edition. So there's a lot of Eberron fans that are in Pathfinder 2nd edition. So I found a document already written out, a lot of all of the conversion stuff. Now Pathfinder did just remaster itself, kind of like D&D is doing, but
Yeah.
Pathfinder did it to differentiate themselves from D&D. So it's a little outdated.
But still, are you guys playing in the 1st edition or 2nd edition of Pathfinder?
We're doing 2nd edition.
Okay, so you'll have to make a couple of adjustments, but I'm sure there are documents, especially for Pathfinder. There must be people out there that have done conversions from 1st to 2nd.
Oh yeah, Well, no, I found a document that's Eberron in 2nd edition.
Oh shit, that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah, 90% of the legwork has been done for me, which, bless their hearts, I appreciate all of it.
I guess the only thing that you're going to have to do is the character creation side. You're going to have to homebrew some stuff, because if they want to get into how the artificer works, there will be mechanics in there that will not translate one-to-one.
To be fair, there is an official Pathfinder class called the Inventor. You want to play an artificer, just be an inventor.
Perfect. And I'm sure you'll be able to find a lot of, it's actually going to be relatively easy to tweak the species or races or lineages or whatever it's called, right?
Oh yeah, I actually found we use an app to manage our character sheets. I found a download pack that adds them in already.
Perfect.
Easy peasy. And also the document that I found has all of the ancestries for Eberron and all of their options.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, maybe more than 90% of the legwork has been done for me.
That's phenomenal. So, yeah, I know that you have got well over a year worth of the campaign that you're in before you're able to go explore Eberron. which means that you and I may actually be running Eberron campaigns. That may overlap for a little bit. That'd be fun to compare notes in a
That
number of years. So
literally, do you know how funny it would be if we just decide that we're gonna craft a very similar plot and see how our tables handle it differently?
I am going to bet you, I will bet you that my players will be more murder hobo than yours.
Yes, my we killed an enemy in my campaign who ended up after we found out after they were dead that they ran away from the evil circus, and there were almost tears.
Amazing. The last subplot that I want to bring up that like we didn't really get into the different themes of subplots. Like we talked about political assassination, which is clearly like political themed. You mentioned very briefly about the Blood of Vol, where it's going to be like religion themed. But when you look at all the big conflicts, and people can go back and listen to us talk about that in episode, oh shit, like 126, 127, somewhere around there, where I started to list all the conflicts and character arcs, and we did a big deep dive on it. But one of the major subplots that we see in a lot of media that we didn't discuss was the romantic subplot.
Yes, I'm running one of those in Extinction Curse.
I was going to ask you if you were playing with that or if it was weird and touchy because you're dating one of your players and all
No,
that.
that's the one that I'm running the romantic subplot with.
Perfect.
Yes. So when that part comes up, I just get to flirt with my boyfriend. Oh no. Although it was fun because I was like, you know what, let's make this even. And I literally had one of the NPCs offer to sleep with his brother. But of course that's me saying it. So he did not expect that. It was kind of fun.
So one of the things I'm gonna before we wrap up, let me tell a little story about a romantic subplot. The thing that I'm doing right now is I have given Casey, Megan, and Charlie the opportunity to go to the City of the Undead, which is run essentially by Council of Vampires. But above the Council of Vampires, there are two vampires that oversee everything. One of them is Cass the Betrayer, and the other one is Strahd. And above them is Vecna, who runs all of it. So they're dealing with very famous and very powerful NPCs. But I know for a fact that Megan and Casey are both enamored with the idea of Cass. And I'm playing him as such a tortured soul who was actually asking Casey's ASMR is like, your God is a God of the stars, yes? Of the night. Does he ever respond to prayers? Because no one's answered my prayers in such a long time. Like I'm leaning so fucking hard into it. And so they're both very enamored with Cass the Betrayer. So I wanted to make Strahd, who's just on record, it is canon. That guy's a fucking hornball. He just like throws himself at every pretty female that comes through
Okay,
the
well,
phobia.
we're gonna have to tell Peps about that one.
Well, I mean, that's a perfect example of what Peps and the All Natural 20s ended up doing to Strahd. So anyway, I brought Strahd in, but he's just a little bit more like they've both played Curse of Strahd, so they have preconceptions about him, and he was very much being a standoffish, pompous prick. Until he finally got down to like to one-on-one with them, and he's like, I have vampire brides and it's not fulfilling, and I'm thinking that maybe when you want to build a life with someone, it has to be based on a life, and the idea of it ending is what brings it its beauty, its impermanence. And he says, so maybe my future brides should be alive, and I would really love the opportunity to, once this apocalypse has passed, if we all survive, would you come stay at my castle for a week? And he offered that to each of them, and they both said yes because they're trying to get on his good side. But when they did this, he suddenly became very more a whole lot more amenable to their wishes. He was trying to get on their good side. And like they are slowly starting to look at Strahd as well, to the point where Megan's talking about her vampire harem. But the thing that threw them for a fucking loop was when Charlie ended up sitting down having lunch with Strahd for a couple of political things that he wanted to get done. And Strahd gave Charlie's character, Valdis, the same offer. Maybe what I'm doing wrong is dealing with brides. Maybe what I need is a husband. And Charlie's character was just fucking baffled. Charlie
I
just,
love that.
oh yeah. And so having Strahd being far more reasonable and far more seductive than they were expecting and bisexual made the entire table go like they stopped everything. What are we doing here? So all three of them have agreed to, if Strahd survives the apocalypse, and he should, I don't have any plans to put them against him. if he survives the apocalypse, they may all end up as part of Strahd's harem, and I'm fucking about it. I love it. And this has nothing to do with the main plot.
If that happens, you literally need to have Peps guest star for the role playing for that.
I don't think we can actually air rated X content on
What?
on our podcast channels, but maybe we'll just drop it in the Discord.
Yeah. Well, I don't think you're streaming your game, so when your game gets there, you'll just call up Peps and have her join in the role playing, pun intended, of the how it goes.
Yeah. Also, I'm gonna finish the story off by saying Mieka's absolutely pissed that she missed that fucking couple of sessions because she wants an invitation now too. So
Of course she does.
yeah.
I mean, if Strahd offered, I'd say yes. Hello.
Is there anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up?
No, that's all I got.
So that's all for our discussion on subplots. Thank you, Scott, for choosing this topic, creating this with me, and supporting the Patreon. Is there anyone you'd like to give a shout out to before we wrap up?
I mean, of course, Joe and Andy, they are the best players I ever could have asked for. Gave a shout out to Dice Will Roll, and I'll give a shout out to, as Andre called us, the Great Worm Council. We're a lot of fun. You should definitely join us.
There's 4 of you now, which is a lot of fun as well. So
I heard. I don't know our newest member very well. Maybe we'll have to fix that.
I'm trying to fix it right now. We're going to be scheduling his episodes here in the next few days. So anyway, thanks everyone for listening to another episode of the It's a Mimic podcast. If you'd like to support us, we have a donate button on our website, itsamimic.com, a store with some It's a Mimic merch, and a Patreon. This episode and others can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and most other podcast apps. Thanks again for listening to It's a Mimic, where you never know what you're going to get.
Okay, Dan.
I have been trying to fight back this. I started off with a coffee thinking like warmth is going to loosen up my vocal cords, but it just dried me out.
Well, it was coffee. A beer did great for me. Maybe not my vocal cords, but it loosened up my brain.
Fair.
I had one of the tall boys of a Coors banquet.
Are you a Coors man?
No. It's what Andy bought, and I ain't gonna say no to the beer we have.
Hey, free beer. Free beer's free beer.
Free beer's free beer's free beer. I guess I can say I'm like supporting a local brewery, considering Coors is in Colorado.
I don't think that counts, Scott.
I don't think it does, but I've never actually toured the Coors facility, even though it's literally I could be there within 45 minutes of my apartment.
I don't like,
if not less.
So I've never been to a winery. I've never done any tour or anything like that. My mom and dad years ago went to the Guinness. What do they call it for Scotch? Factory?
Distillery, probably.
Distillery, probably. Yeah. So they went and did that, and they've been to a number of wineries and other places like that. Casey famously, at the beginning of the pandemic, when it was all starting to pop off and she knew that lockdown was imminent, she went up into the Canadian Rockies, where we've got actually a whole slew of vineyards up there, and she toured a lot of these vineyards and wineries and whatnot. She famously came back with more wine than she could handle. It took multiple trips up the elevator to her apartment, and she just spent the entire lockdown just drinking wine and playing Animal Crossing, and it was fucking amazing.
You know what? She's a goddamn icon for that.
Right?
Also, I looked it up to the Google Maps location, Coors Brewery Tour. From my apartment, 36 minutes.
How much is it?
I'm not sure.
Because I'm always curious, because some of them, I know that a couple of the vineyards are free because they're just trying to sucker you in to buy their product, right? But
oh yeah,
but
it's also Coors, so they don't really. My money is just a drop in a giant fucking lake.
Yeah, but they're also cores. They're not going to turn down a dollar, right? So,
No, they're not. I mean, neither would I. Let's see. What does their website say? Reservations. Hold on, Joe's been there. Let me holler at him. Oh, he said no clue, never done it.
oh, well, there you go.
Oh, here we go. The brewery tour starts at $20.
Shit, that's so cheap, and I'm sure you're going to get a free beer out of it too, right? Because they're going to want you to walk around with a beer in your hand.
Oh, well, I ain't gonna say no.
Yeah. So are you like a light beer, dark beer? What's your
No, I love ambers. Actually, specifically, I love sours. Oh, I love a sour.
Oh my God, there's a place that was downtown in like the trendy part of downtown Vancouver. I don't think it survived the pandemic, but it used to have flights of sours. So we would go in on Fridays when I was working downtown, and I would get moderately shit faced with my entire company as we would each try all 12 of their sours. So like you would get 12 mini beers in 3 flights, and we would low key get shit faced at
Oh my
11:30
gosh.
on a Friday, every Friday.
Joe
But
and
they,
Andy went to a brewery in Colorado Springs, about an hour south of Denver, and they found a brewery that did a flight of every single beer that they had for $50. I want to say it was like 25 different beers.
oh, that's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a commitment, but that's all right. No,
Well, they split it, so
yeah, well, there you go. Yeah. I remember that the very best sour I've ever had was a blackberry sour. Like,
yes.
I don't know what it is. Blackberry sours are the best. I'm a dark beer guy, but if you give me the right cider or the right sour, I'm happier than a pig in shit. I like it better than my stouts.
I
So
love it. Although, okay, so you're a stout guy. This is they had the beers of these, but also a flight. I found this in St. Louis, Missouri. St. Louis. They said Louis, that felt weird. St. Louis, Missouri. They have their Deer Agony Stout. Now you could do it. I would do the flight where they finish it up in a different bourbon barrel. They had Buffalo Trace, Old Forester, Woodford Reserve, and George Dickel.
Jesus, that just sounds like a good afternoon.
Get a flight. They had it as a flight of the four of those. I almost did it, but I don't like stouts.
I don't know why. I guess my dad. So I was living downtown for a while there, and my dad was working downtown, like 3 blocks away, and I was working nights, and so he and I would meet for lunch at a British pub. So it was always a stout and like a chicken pot pie or something, like a pretty heavy lunch. But
Where you ate a meal and drank a meal.
yeah, the more bread in the glass than on the top of the pot pie. So, but there's just something about a Guinness and a shepherd's pie, or any stout and a chicken pot pie. There's just something about it. I don't know what it is. Terry would be fucking proud of me.
He would. He would. I love how I got to hear the origin story of when you first met Terry.
Yeah, when I first met Terry, he was overwhelmed because he had found out that he would be running Curse of Strahd with like 6 days notice. And so he
Yep.
was very much in crisis mode and like crisis management mode. And so it was, all right, team, everybody circle up. We're going to be introducing our characters. And he was like running like a meeting. And it was very strange because I'd been playing with like old friends for so long that,
He ran it like the damn military, okay?
yeah, exactly. He was given a TED talk for the first like 20 minutes about the campaign setting and what to expect and so on and so forth.
At least he took the effort to do that. I'm gonna give him props.
He did a phenomenal job considering that he was absolutely DMing on the back foot for that entire campaign. I think that between the absolute chaotic evil player that was with us and his sycophantic girlfriend, and then Jamie's dude broing and actually, I think the rule goes this way. Terry had his work cut out for him in a big fucking way, and he handled it perfectly. So
I love that for him.